So often I find myself thinking about different concepts in storytelling that I'd love to talk about and really discuss my feelings and thoughts on, and I think this is the perfect medium to discuss those ideas. So welcome to my new series, Storytelling Saturdays. Or maybe Story Saturdays. I haven't figured it out yet, but I don't know how long this series will run for. Maybe it'll be like one episode, maybe it'll be like 8. I'm really excited to talk about today's topic, bodily autonomy and fiction. Hi Pinkies! So recently I've been thinking a lot about how the loss of limbs can affect a character in storytelling.
Never.
There's this iconic scene in Star Wars where Luke Skywalker looks at his robotic hand and then up at his father, who's this evil cyborg, throws away his lightsaber and decides not to become like his father. It's really interesting, and it says a lot about how we view the loss of limbs. George Lucas is almost obsessed with this concept. I think he really carries it out in a way that many storytellers just haven't really come to the same level yet. For Luke Skywalker, as we've already discussed, the loss of limbs mean a loss of humanity. After he loses his arm in the middle movie, he starts becoming darker. You don't really think that he's as pure as he was before. And by the end of the trilogy, he almost gives into that, but stops himself and decides to go back into the light. George Lucas takes this concept even further in the prequel trilogy, where Anakin loses almost his entire, forearm in a battle with Count Dooku. Anakin is already a darker character to begin with. He's raised in slavery on Tatooine. He becomes darker and darker as the trilogy goes on. By the third movie, not only has he lost most of his arm, but he also has a big scar on his face, which we really don't have a clear excuse for what happened there. But here again, we see a physical change in Anakin's body that expresses a change in character. This is how George Lucas expresses this concept and uses it to tell his stories. But how do other storytellers use it? The oldest story I know, and one of my favorite stories of all time, is Beowulf.
Mine is strength and lust and power. I am Beowulf!
Beowulf is this centuries-old tale. It was an oral story. Not like that, you weirdo. It was an oral story, so it was just expressed through poetry. And eventually a person scribed it out and wrote it so that it could be preserved. That scribe was a Christian, so there's different little things that have been sort of implanted in there, so we don't really know what the exact true story is, but it basically revolves around a warrior named Beowulf who fights for this specific tribe of people. This other specific tribe of people is attacked by a beast named Grendel, so they ask for Beowulf to come help defeat him because he's the strongest warrior in the land. The second tribe agrees, and Beowulf comes and they fight this monster. In a very homoerotic scene, Beowulf is completely naked and fights Grendel and ends up ripping off Grendel's arm. Grendel sort of escapes through the door and makes his way back to his mother, but then dies in her arms because back then, if you lost an arm, you're probably not living through that, even if you are this inhuman monster that Grendel seems to be. Still, here we can draw some conclusions. When reading Beowulf, I kind of feel like it's written by a caveman in some ways. There's this sense of tribalism and not leaving your own pack that sort of permeates the entire story. Grendel is this otherly creature who keeps raiding the village, and his mom is even more inhuman than he is. Grendel losing an arm could be seen as just another way to further other him from the story and our main human characters. One of my favorite examples of limb loss in a story is Hiccup in How to Train Your Dragon. Hiccup is your classic boyish protagonist who by the end of the story becomes more of a hero type character who's girthed up a little bit, has learned a lot as he goes through his journey. But one of the things that sets him apart is with how much weight they treat the loss of a limb. At the end of How to Train Your Dragon, Hiccup loses his leg. I think it's bit off by like a dragon or something. But as a kid, this scene always hit me so hard because it seems like he's died. Watching it now, understanding that it's a kid's movie, it doesn't have the same weight it did when I was younger, but in this story, when Hiccup is attacked, you're led to believe that he dies here. When he wakes up, there's so much white light around, It's almost ambiguous whether he did live or not. Could this just be his afterlife, believing that dragons and the human world have sort of come together? In a way, losing his leg seems like the necessary sacrifice to get the future he always wanted. How to Train Your Dragon is also smart enough to sort of pursue these concepts further. How does losing a leg affect Hiccup's life? He can't walk the same way that he used to. It also brings him closer to his dragon. At the beginning of the movie, Toothless loses a bit of his tail, and because of this, Hiccup has to make a new tail for him. In this way, they share a created limb, both made by the same creator, Hiccup. It's an interesting concept, and there's all sorts of little gadgets and things that you get to see Hiccup making to work with his foot. It's a unique and creative approach to this trope, and I really hope to see more of this when the new live-action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon comes. This discussion wouldn't be complete without a mention of Cyborg.
We can put it back, Vic. Make you whole again. I'm not broken.
The DC hero who is nearly killed before getting most of his body replaced by robotic parts either made by his father or by aliens. Cyborg is an interesting one because his body sort of veers into the territory of bodily horror. Cyborg's feelings about his body are very much a part of the character. In the Justice League movie, he seems to have rather wished that he died than become the hero that he is now. As he begins to love his dad, he accepts the new body that he has, and I kind of wish that it stayed in that realistic state for a little longer. Obviously, fiction is not reality. We can't have Cyborg just mulling in his own hatred of his body forever, but where else can we take this concept? All of this limb loss sort of leads us to this idea of bodily autonomy. Thinking to myself about this concept, I remembered Ariel in The Little Mermaid, as well as Mulan, and even Cinderella. These stories have a protagonist that wishes their body was a different way. Obviously, that's not exactly what these stories are trying to do, but it's interesting to think about. Following this path further, what characters start off in a place of not liking their body, and in the story in a place with a sort of new body, or maybe new parts in their body? Oftentimes in these kinds of stories, I feel that we'll start in a place where our character does not like their body, and then by the end of the story comes to accept it for what it is. Very few times is there a case where they do not like their body, and then are fulfilled by the end of it with a new body that they are happy in. This brings us to one of my favorite modern examples of bodily autonomy in media, the Orville.
What about you? Why do you want to join?
Ever since I was a young child, I have always felt incomplete. As if the person I am today is a bookmark, a placeholder, until I discover who I am. I have not found the answer at home, so perhaps it is out among the stars.
Now I urge you, of all of the things that I've talked about today, I urge you, if you have not seen The Orville is a show that desperately deserves your attention. Okay, I know, I never listened to those warnings myself, so we're just gonna continue anyways. In The Orville, there's a species of aliens called the Mocklins. In the beginning, we're led to believe that this is a male-only society. But by the third episode of the series, a Mocklin couple on our main ship have a child, and this child is a female. Here we learn that the Mocklins are not a male-only society, they are almost an enforced male-only society, meaning that any females born will be surgically and chemically changed to females. Now, from a story standpoint, there's already a lot of interesting plot threads there. But as we continue into the story, this Mocklin couple transitions their child into being a male and never tells him that he was born female. As we go further into the story, by the third season, this child, Topa, is now grown up. And he's not so happy about his life. He doesn't know what's wrong, but he feels like he's in the wrong body. He starts asking questions of his superiors and non-Moclan friends, and eventually comes to finding the truth that he was born female. And immediately, everything is put into context. Topa isn't allowed to transition legally because of a lot of cultural and political reasons in the show, but they found a workaround, and by the end of the episode, you get to see Topa transition to female. It's just an enchanting and wonderful scene. It's so heartwarming. I cry every time I watch it, and it's some of the most unique modern storytelling that I've experienced. Well, Pinkies, that's all I've got for you today. Let me know some of your favorite stories that address bodily autonomy, maybe body horror, whatever you want to talk about. I'd love to talk to you about these things in the comments, and how we can use these concepts to explain what we are as humans. What do these things mean to us? How can we tell better stories? You get what I'm saying. Thank you for watching. Oh, and also let me know if you have more story-related ideas to talk about, because this is fun. Hope you have a great day. Bye, Pinkies!